Hi guys, you're welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, we're going to be learning how to make this simple Bubu dress using an Aso-Oke to design the neckline. If this is your first time coming across my channel, my name is Nancy. Kindly subscribe, share and like my tutorials. And also put on your notification bell to be notified when I upload new tutorials. For the Ankara fabric, I made use of 3.5 yards. So these are straps of Aso-Oke and I made use of 2.5 yards. So this is the Ankara fabric and I won't be folding it from the width because if I should fold it from the width, the length of the dress would be 45 inches, which would be very short compared to my desired dress length. So for this reason, I'll be folding the fabric in such a way that the labeled borders is placed directly on each other. Now I placed the measuring tape from the top of the fabric to mark my dress length. So my desired dress length is 60 inches. I added extra 1 inch so in allowance to the hem, which made it 61 inches altogether. So take note that we'll be marking the front piece of the dress first. The first step is to rule the starting line, which is also called the shoulder line. From the center of the shoulder line, I placed the measuring tape to mark the neck width. For a small size person, you should mark 3.5 inches, and for a plus size person, you should mark 4 inches. So basically, the neckline for this dress is a V neckline, but for now, I'm just going to mark 1 inch below the starting line to connect the neck width to this point, and this would be a guide. Later on, I'll trim it out to be a V neckline. Now from the center of the fold, I place my measuring tape to mark my shoulder measurements divided by 2 inches. The next step is to mark my sleeve length. Now from the shoulder point, I would place my tape to mark my sleeve length. So my desired sleeve length is 11 inches. I added extra 1 inch to that, which made it 12 inches together. Now from this point I marked the sleeve length, I'll go in by 1 inch to connect that point to the neck width, and this would form the shoulder slope. Since this is a Bubu dress, after the shoulder line, the next line is the bust point line. So this is my shoulder to my bust point, and I went ahead to rule a straight line across this point. I connected the shoulder slope to the bust point line, and this is my sleeve opening. Now for the body measurement, you have to work with the largest part of your body. So it's either you use your hip circumference or your bust circumference, depending on which is bigger. For me, my hip circumference is bigger than my bust circumference. So I'll be working with my hip circumference. I divided my hip circumference by 4 and placed the measurement on the bust point line. For ease, I'll go ahead to add extra 4 inches allowance to that. Now from this point, I'm going to rule a straight line vertically downwards to the full length of the dress. Now on this side, I would make a little curve which would represent the armhole curve. And before cutting out my front piece, I would add half inch sewing allowance to the top of the shoulder slope. Alright, so now I'll go ahead to cut out the shoulder slope to trim out the neckline and to also trim out the sides of the dress. Now I would be working on the Aso-Oke which would be used for the front piece. For the length of the Aso-Oke, I decided to make mine to stop on my waistline which is 15 inches. If you want yours to be longer, then just follow the same process. So now since I'm working with 15 inches, it simply means that if I fold this fabric into two, I would be needing 30 inches. After the 30 inches, I would add extra 10 inches for the folding effect because by the time I fold the strap, it would take some inches from the Aso-Oke fabric. So I added extra 10 inches. The next step is to fold the fabric into two equally. After which I went ahead to adjust the top part of the fabric in order for the Aso-Oke to form a V neckline. So now to measure my neck depth for this Aso-Oke, I'll be working with my desired neck depth. My desired neck depth is 8 inches, but I added extra 5 inches to that, which made it 13 inches altogether. So I placed my tape on the starting of the Aso-Oke to make sure that the V-neck stops at 13 inches on both sides. So this simply means that you should add extra 5 inches to your desired neck depth. And the reason is because after placing the Aso-Oke on the Ankara fabric, we still need to do some trimming, which would later reduce the neck depth to our desired neck depth. Now I went ahead to pin this crossed part of the Aso-Oke together. After pinning, I folded the Aso-Oke into two equally. The next step is to place the neck design directly on the front piece. And to do this accurately, I would place my tape from the shoulder to mark my waistline. And this is because I want the neck design to stop directly on my waistline. So if you want yours to be longer, then you can extend it. Alright, so at this point, I'll go ahead to make sure that this side of the neckline is placed on the center, and then my V neckline is also obvious. At this point, I would pin the Aso-Oke to the Ankara fabric so I can easily trim out the excess Aso-Oke on the shoulder. So I would flip this to the other side to trim out the excess Aso-Oke. And this was the reason I said that the 13 inches neck depth initially isn't too deep, because after sewing, it will later reduce to your desired neck depth. After this is done, I'll go ahead to use my scissors to trim out the neckline following the shape of the Aso-Oke. So I'm just going to unpin the Aso-Oke, and then I'll spread out the front piece so you can easily see the shape of the neckline. At this stage, I'll go ahead to duplicate the neck design by placing this on my other Aso-Oke fabric to cut out exactly the same shape. So after cutting out the neck design for the back piece, I went ahead to pin the crust part. The next step is to also duplicate the front piece of the dress by placing the front piece on your actual fabric to cut out exactly the same shape. For now, I'll be working with just the front piece of the dress. So take note that this is the wrong side of the fabric. And then I would place the Aso-Oke directly on the wrong side of the fabric, making sure that the neckline is equal. So I'll be trimming out the excess fabric on the edges of the neckline. Now I took the front piece of the dress to the sewing machine to stitch the V neckline by ½ inch following the direction of the choke. After stitching the neckline, I notched the center of the neckline so I can easily flip the neck design to the right side of the Ankara fabric. So I'll take the front piece to my sewing machine to stitch the edges of the neck design following the direction of my finger. So this is all for the front piece. The next step is to work on the back piece. For the back piece, I folded this little piece into two, then placed the back piece directly on the fold to trim out exactly the same V neckline. And for the width of the facing, I placed my tape from the top to mark 2.5 inches, and I would also mark 2.5 inches from the down part as well to connect both points together. So this will be the facing for the neckline of the back piece. Now, the next thing I did was to spread out the back piece of the dress. Also take note that this is the right side of the fabric. Now on the right side of the fabric, I'll be placing the neck design directly on it. Then I'll pin this together. I'll take this to my sewing machine to stitch the edges of the Aso-Oke following the direction of the chalk. After stitching the edges of the Aso-Oke, the next step is to fold the edges of the facing in by ½ inch, or you overlock it. So I folded the edges of the facing, and I would place the right side of the facing directly on the neckline to stitch the edges by ½ inch. After stitching the facing, I flipped the facing to the wrong side of the fabric. So this is all for the back piece of the kaftan. So I decided to add a pocket to this kaftan. So for this reason, I folded the back piece into two equally, and then I would also fold the front piece of my kaftan into two equally as well, to place them on each other so I can easily notch the points I want my pocket to begin. To mark the points I want the pocket to begin, I placed my tape from the shoulder, and my waistline is 15 inches. So after my waistline, I added extra 3 inches to that, and that made it 18 inches. So you should do the same for your measurements. So I'm just going to go ahead to notch those points I chalked. So the next thing I did was to place the back piece of the kaftan on the front piece of the kaftan. And to stitch the shoulders together, I would flip the facing of the back piece to the front piece as shown, making sure that the Aso-Oke meets each other on this line. I'll take this to the sewing machine to stitch the shoulders together by 1 inch, following the direction of my chalk. And on this side, I would repeat the same sewing process as well. After stitching the shoulders, this is how it should be. Now, to secure the facing properly, I placed my hemming gum underneath the facing. Now I placed a separate fabric directly on the facing, and then I would use my pressing iron to melt the hemming gum which is underneath the facing. So I have finally achieved the neckline for this kaftan. And the next step is on how to cut out the pockets. I need 4 pieces for this pocket, so I folded this fabric into two and further folded it into two again. So I practically folded this fabric into four. Now for the pocket opening, I measured a width of 9 inches. Now I went ahead to insert my hand into the pocket opening and then spread out my fingers to trace out how wide I want the pocket to be. Now I'll go ahead to trim out the pocket following the direction of the chalk. I'm going to be placing each pocket on the points I notched initially. So I place the right side of the pocket on the right side of the fabric to stitch by ½ inch, and I'm also going to place the second pocket on this side to also stitch by ½ inch. Now for the back piece of the dress, I place the pocket on the points I notched as well to stitch by ½ inch. And then I placed the fourth pocket on this point to also stitch by half inch. Now to secure the sleeve opening, I folded it in by half inch and further folded it in by half inch. And then for the other side, I would repeat the same sewing process as well. After I secured the sleeve opening, I went ahead to place the front piece of the kaftan directly on the back piece of the kaftan. Recall that this is a straight kaftan, so you need to make side slits at the bottom of this dress in order for you to walk conveniently. So I want the length of the slit to be 15 inches from the bottom, and I'm also going to mark 15 inches on the other side as well. Now I'll take the dress to the sewing machine to stitch the sides following the direction of the chalk, and I would stop stitching when I get to this point. I would also repeat the same sewing process on the other side as well. After stitching the sides of the dress, I turned the dress to the right side of the fabric. The final step is to stitch the slits by the side by folding it half inch in and further folding it by half inch. And you should also stitch this other side of the slits. And once the side slits has been properly stitched, the next step is to stitch the hem of the dress separately by folding it in. Hi guys, thanks for watching to the very end. I hope this tutorial was helpful and you should give it a try. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe, share and like my tutorials, and also put on your notification bell to be notified when I upload new tutorials so you don't get to miss any of my tutorials. Thanks for watching and see you in my next one.